Next question from Ethan. With rumors saying the Yankees are out on Arenado and Bregman, do you think there is still a big move they could make, or is every move from here more in the background, like getting Tim Hill back? Looking at who's left, I feel if they are going to bolster their lineup, it's going to have to be from trades. What do you guys think?
You are Locked On Yankees, your daily New York Yankees podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Yankees, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm Stacey Gotsulias. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. With me, as usual, my co-host, Brian McKeon. Brian.
Stacey, live from Walt Disney World in a hotel room. How are you?
I'm good. You're better than I am right now because you're in a much warmer place. But before we get started, don't forget, subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcasting platform you prefer. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, like our videos, hit the bell so you're notified when our videos go live. It's Fanmail Friday. Yay! The last Fanmail Friday of 2024, by the way, which is so weird to say. I can't believe New Year's is next week. That's crazy. And pretty much the whole show is Fan Mail Friday. In segment 3, we are answering a fan mail question that we had gotten 3 weeks ago. So we're dedicating a whole segment to it. And then segments 1 and 2, regular Fan Mail Friday. So without further ado, let's get started as usual. And if you're a regular, we start with the insiders first. If you're not a regular, our insiders, you can join our Insiders Club. We'll tell you about that in a little bit. And you can ask us questions for Fan Mail Friday, and you'll be featured first, but not first, because Betty's first. Our insider Betty is always first. It's tradition, and we don't stray from tradition. So Betty's question, her last one of 2024. If we could manage to get rid of Stroman's contract, which way would you go? Relief pitcher or infielder?
It's an interesting question because I struggle with where they're going to wind up going with the extra income, right? I think a lot of people now are pushing for Tim Hill to make a return, and I'm not against that at all. Are they going to go heavy on an infielder next offseason or potentially this offseason? So personally, Betty, I want Alex Bregman on this team. I'm of the belief that Judge and Cole are only getting a year older in the next year, and you can't waste a year and say, oh, we're going to go after Vlad Guerrero Jr. next offseason. We're going to go after Kyle Tucker next offseason. Now, next offseason, when those guys are available, yeah, I'm all for going after them. But you can't just say we're going to go after these guys next offseason, because that includes wasting another year of Garrett Cole's prime. It includes wasting another year of Aaron Judge's prime, which I also don't think is worth it. So I would personally like to go after a guy like an Alex Bregman and then find a trade partner for Marcus Stroman. I don't think they're as motivated to make a Marcus Stroman trade right now. And here's why, Stacey. I think his contract is easy to move. I do. I think if you eat a little bit of it, and it doesn't count towards the luxury tax, and there's plenty of teams that need pitching. And I think if you're not asking for much back, which I can't think the Yankees really are, I don't think it's hard to move a contract like that.
I would agree with that. I do want Tim Hill back. We talked about that with JJ. Basically JJ described my entire rest of the offseason, like how I wanted it to look. So when he said that, I was like, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking. But I would love to have Tim Hill back. I know he wants to come back. Mm-hmm. Like I always joked about during the playoffs, they rescued him from the White Sox, and I think he would like to be with the Yankees again. He did a really great job. Should have been in game 1 of the World Series. Things probably would have turned out slightly different if he were part of game 1, but he wasn't. And I think he would be a really good, addition, right, at this point, because he's not really technically on the team. So he would be a good addition to the roster.
It feels like there's an understanding that with him and Tommy Kahnle, they both want to come back, and the Yankees can work on those moves. It doesn't matter when those guys sign. You don't need to sign them early on in the offseason. They can sign as late as they want, as long as there's a mutual agreement that both of them are going to kind of sign. That's what it feels like. Another team can, I'm sure, swoop in, but I don't think there's much motivation for that to happen around the league.
Right.
Let's go to Aaron L. He says, considering both the A's and Marlins need to significantly up their payrolls to avoid a grievance from MLBPA for not spending their revenue-sharing money, do you think that it's more likely that Marcus Stroman gets salary dumped to either team? or that the MLBPA actually files complaints against them. It seems very difficult for them to up their payroll to acceptable levels without taking on bad contracts. And DJ LeMahieu has those pesky 10-5 rights. Stacey, I'll say this. I don't think there's going to be a grievance filed against them because there's too many other owners in baseball that also have the same strategy. Now it's more obvious with the Rays and the Athletics that they're not spending the money. I think it's a little more clear with them because they never spend money. But there's plenty of other teams in the league right now that haven't spent a dime this offseason. I mean, look around the entire league. The Rockies, what have they done? You know, what have the White Sox done? And they have the most reason to spend out of anyone. What have the Reds really done? They made one trade. That was it. What did the Pirates do? So, I mean, there's a lot of teams that haven't made moves. So I don't think you can really, those two teams are the most obvious because those are the teams that religiously lose 100 games every single year, have no one in their ballpark, and don't spend money. But, you could, I don't think there's much of an argument against a lot of these teams people complain about too, because, the Marlins have spent money in their past. We went over that list a couple weeks ago of the top given out contracts in the history of baseball. They're one of the top teams out there. They did give Giancarlo Stanton a huge deal. They traded him away and stuff, but at least they gave out a $300 million deal. When are the Rays doing that? When are the Athletics doing that? So all these teams that you, I don't think there's going to be much of a grievance filed. I don't. Do I think it's wrong? Yeah, but I think the only way you fix this is when the CBA is up, getting a floor to be added into the part of the CBA. And I don't think the players would necessarily be against that either, to be honest with you.
Right. Next question from Ethan. With rumors saying the Yankees are out on Arenado and Bregman, do you think there is still a big move they could make, or is every move from here more in the background, like getting Tim Hill back? Looking at who's left, I feel if they are going to bolster their lineup, it's going to have to be from trades. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's funny because going into the season, right? I'll have a question for you. I'll relay this as a question to you. Do you think it's necessary do you think every big move for the Yankees is going to be made by opening day?
No, I think there's probably going to be, they're going to go into opening day with a roster or a lineup that people are going to be kind of like, ugh, not horrified, but thinking that there needs to be more. But I think that there are plenty of teams who are probably going to be dealing at the trade deadline, and Cashman's going to try and pick up someone or someone's at the trade deadline.
And that's what's funny, right? So we all look at it as April's this deadline, or I guess February when pitchers and catchers report, is this deadline of what the roster needs to look like if they're winning a World Series in November. And I don't think the GMs look at it that way. I think guys like Brian Cashman, they look at it as, no, our deadline is July 31st.
Well, I think it's crazy that fans feel that way, because how many trade deadlines moves were there made during the dynasty years where they picked up these guys who contributed? If they didn't contribute in the regular season, they suddenly showed up in the playoffs and started hitting for the Yankees.
You're right. And it's been proven over, not even just through the Yankees, right? I mean, teams have done that for years, deadline moves in every sport. So I don't think it's necessarily that crazy that the Yankees can't make these moves. I think management views it, honestly, as July 31st is our deadline. And I think they look at it as a more important deadline, too, because you get to see your team's strengths and weaknesses going into that whole first half of the season. So you can really see where guys are struggling, where guys are improving. I will say this, though. I think there could be some motivation, and you're starting to hear a little bit of chatter out there that there could be a Gleyber Torres reunion. And I think we'll maybe dive into that sometime next week and really break it down. But I will say I'm starting to ease up to it a little more and more as I think about it. And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world the more and more I think about it.
Well, it's funny that you said that. Read the next question from our last insider of segment 1.
What's your opinion? This comes from Tim. He says, what's your opinion on whether the Yankees will be better prepared defensively going into the 2025 season? I think they already are, right? Goldschmidt's a plus defender.
No, but it's not just having people who are good at defense. It's being prepared defensively, because they should just play the 5th inning of Game 5 of the World Series on a loop for these guys and be like, let's make sure this never happens again, because it's the most embarrassing thing ever. They have bumper stickers now that show, 0-5, 2 outs, all the stuff. Like, Dodger fans are putting that on their cars. The Yankees are never going to be able to escape this. So it's not a matter of having guys who can play defensively. It's being prepared defensively. It's not that Rizzo couldn't play defense, but it seemed like he wasn't prepared to play defense. He's a good first baseman, but he didn't look like one during the playoffs.
That's definitely accurate. I mean, but there's other guys that are hard to blame, right? Like I can't sit here and blame Aaron Judge for that pop fly. That's a routine play that he makes all the time.
That was weird.
It is, but that's the point, right? Like it's a weird freak thing that happens in the World Series. I don't think it's something that you can necessarily sit there and say, oh, Aaron Judge wasn't prepared or focused in the moment, because he's one of the top plus defenders in all of baseball, yearly, religiously. So I don't know. It's one of those things that I look at. You're gonna have holes in your defense throughout the 9 guys on the field. Like that's gonna happen. I think by trading Trevino, they tell you they really, really trust Austin Wells behind the plate, and they believe in his improvement behind the plate, which is key because Trevino's known as being a plus defender behind the plate. They're telling you they really trust Austin Wells back there. Volpe's a plus defender. Chisholm, I think wherever you put him is going to be a plus defender, which is weird to say because third base was his weak spot coming into the team, and he was tremendous at third base. But second base is the spot that he's best at. Goldschmidt's a plus defender. I think their defense is better than it was last year, but I wonder what they do with Gleyber because I think, defense is his, soft spot for sure.
And he also doesn't want to move off second base. I mean, he didn't really want to move from shortstop either. So
he doesn't, but his offensive numbers last year were better than we all kind of like to remember them being. And he definitely had some moments where he was a true leadoff hitter for them, and he played really well in the playoffs. I also think his defense is a little overrated how bad his defense is sometimes. It's overspoken about.
It's just because the mistakes that he makes are big mistakes in like a bad situation, and it seems to be magnified because of that. Like he could go 20, 30 games without a blunder, but the blunder that he makes is always a big one, if that makes sense.
It's always in the 8th inning when you need a big double play. I'd agree with you there.
Yeah.
Which I think is a little unfair to Gleyber.
It's more mental lapse too with him because you see it on the base paths, you see it when he's defending. It's just something, I don't know how you fix that, if you fix that, but that seems to be the issue.
I do think though, the only reason I'd say there's potential for it is because, sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't. And also it's not going to cost them that much if they bring him in. I don't think. What's Gleyber at this point? This late in the offseason, with the lack of reporting you're seeing on Gleyber Torres, what's the deal going to cost for Gleyber Torres? $12.5, $13 million?
Right. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button on our videos, hit the notification so you know when our videos go up. And if you'd like to be a part of next week's Fanmail Friday, post a reply on our videos whenever they're posted, Monday through Thursday, because the days may vary during the off season. And start the question with Fanmail Friday so I can find it. Or you can join the Locked On Yankees Insiders Club, where you get top priority and your questions are answered in segment 1 or segment 2. The link is in the description, and it isn't only for Fanmail Friday. You get text from us. You can text us questions. There's a 14-day free trial, and it's a good time. So coming up next, more Fanmail Friday.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. For me personally, it's thrilling. Now, how about the Indianapolis Colts -7.5 against the New York Football Giants? We're all rooting for a Giant loss if you're a Giant fan out there, right? Because you want the better draft pick. The Giants seem unmotivated to play, and the Colts need the game like everything in the world. They're only favored by a touchdown, and I think it's a great place to get that in, specifically on FanDuel. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Okay. More questions from insiders. This one is from Eric S. Do you think if the Yankees don't return to the World Series that this is Aaron Boone's last year? He has yet to be extended.
I laughed coming in because I did see this question earlier and it made me chuckle. I don't think it's Aaron Boone's last year. I don't think he's close to his last year. I don't think the Yankees are religiously known for doing this. They don't generally extend managers prior to their contract expiring anyway. This is not a thing that's uncommon with them. I really, really doubt it. Here's the thing, Eric. unless everything goes complete haywire, and I mean complete haywire next year, Aaron Boone, the Yankees are going to win 90-plus games next year. I mean, I'd be stunned if they don't win 90 games next year. They're going to be a playoff team. They're going to win 90-plus games. The odds of that not happening, are so far against them winning over 90 games, it's not even funny. They've improved the team every way. Their pitching staff's really good. The only way they lose more than 90 games next year, Stacey, and tell me if I'm wrong, is if there are literally a million key injuries to their entire team.
Yeah.
And if that happens,
let's not put that out in the universe, though.
Sure. But if that happens, let's also acknowledge they're not going to fire Aaron Boone.
Right.
They're going to look at that as, oh, there were, Judge, Stanton, Cole, Hill got hurt. And, that's why our season fell apart. There is no way, to me, this is how I look at it. There is no way Aaron Boone does not return as manager of the Yankees. There is just no way. I don't see how it's possible. The only way I could see it potentially is in the World Series. He makes another call like he did with the Nestor situation. But guess what? Nestor's not here. And if you don't think he's going to learn from that mistake, you're out of your mind also. So I hate to admit it, because I don't like Aaron Boone as a manager, and I think they need to go in a different direction. But if they weren't going to move on from him after the blunders in the postseason last year and the blunders throughout the season last year, I don't think they're ever going to. I just think, Eric, if you love the complaining about Boone, stay tuned to Locked On Yankees next year, because I'm sure we'll have plenty of episodes mid-year where we're complaining about Boone. Mm-hmm. Casey asks, what is your guys' favorite Christmas week signing or trade besides the Teixeira signing?
I don't have one besides the Teixeira one.
Yeah, I think that was one of the better ones. I know Garrett Cole was around Christmas time. I don't know if it was the same. It was Christmas week, but I know that because everyone was tweeting, all I wanted was Cole for Christmas, and I got it. I'll give you that one, but you don't see a lot of them happen around Christmas time, to be honest with you. A lot of these guys, they have families and stuff, and they kind of take a break around this time of year.
Yeah, because we had a similar question a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking up winter meeting signings and trades, and winter signings and trades overall, and there weren't that many from this week that I was looking at. I was like, oh yeah, okay, because it was more either before that or after the new year or something like that. But no, nothing beats Teixeira. I'm sorry. They were saying that whole afternoon he was going to the Red Sox, and the very last second it was like, we got Mark Teixeira, and you're like, what? Like, when my friend posted that, I was like, huh? What are you talking about? And it was the best afternoon ever. Really, it was so much fun.
I think it's interesting because you do get a little bit of an inside track of these guys, like these GMs and stuff that are running these teams. They do have families, and they do want to celebrate the holidays like the rest of us. And I think that's not to say they're not having conference calls and they're not speaking to guys within the organization about what moves to make next. Of course they are. They're still kicking the tires on people, but they're not as motivated to make moves because they do want to spend the time with their family, and everyone else wants to do that too. So it's kind of like this understood thing inside these inside these rooms, I guess, of these organizations, that they want to spend time with their families. So it's interesting, but historically you don't see a lot of moves made around the holidays.
Right. So this next question came in too late for last week's Fanmail Friday, but it's timely considering the subject matter, so we included it. The Yankees seem to have gotten away from small ball of late, but who was your favorite leadoff man / base stealer? I loved Rickey Henderson. And as you all know, Rickey Henderson passed away last weekend. We didn't mention it yet this week, and I realized it when I was editing Monday's show, and then I didn't think I could crowbar it into our interview with JJ, so I figured, okay, I was going to bring it up today, and then I remembered David's question, and I thought, okay, let's include that. Rickey Henderson was playing on the Yankees during my formative years, right? 85 through 89, so I was turning 11 in 1985, and I turned 15 in 1989. And I went to a lot of games in 85, 86, 87 with my father and brother, with the whole family. Like, it was just a lot. He was something else, like, really, during those years. You couldn't keep your eyes off him when he was on base, too, because he always seemed to get on base, and then he was always stealing bases, and he was just amazing. And his longevity, the career longevity, and it's just amazing to me that when the news came out, baseball fans of every team were completely bummed to hear about Rickey Henderson passing away. He didn't even have to be on your team to know, like, that he was incredible. He was an incredible baseball player, and I'm honored to have seen him in a Yankee uniform and an Oakland uniform and all the other uniforms that he wore, because I saw him play against the Yankees as well. And that was just a big bummer, especially his birthday was Christmas. He passed away a few days before his birthday, and that just stinks. And it also, when you get to a certain age, you think of your own mortality, and you think of the fact that Rickey Henderson was turning 66 on Christmas. So he just missed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm only 15 years behind that. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, you think about that too when it happens. But yeah, he was amazing. And I feel bad for people who didn't get to see him play.
A Hall of Famer, MVP, 10-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion, a Gold Glove winner, 3-time Silver Slugger, and an ALCS MVP. Stacey, what Boggle, I didn't obviously watch him play, although I could have, because if you don't realize, which many people didn't, he retired in 2003, which is insane to think about. His playing career started in 1979.
Yeah.
And he retired in 2003. That's wild. He was 44 years old playing with the Dodgers, which no one thinks of Rickey Henderson as. Before that, he was a Red Sox. He was a Padre before that. I love when guys retire with these weird teams, like, or finish their playing careers with these weird teams. You're like, he played for them? Just like how he was a Met in 2000. Did anyone remember that? In 99 and 2000? I guess because of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
What boggles my mind, Stacey, is these stolen base numbers. We just freaked out this past year because Ohtani gave you the first 50-50 season ever. Now, we've seen guys 50 for 50 home runs, and we've seen guys steal 50 bases. Never doing it together is pretty remarkable. But regardless, 50 stolen bases in a year is a really, really good season. 50 home runs is great. 50 stolen bases is great. But listen to some of Rickey Henderson's top stolen base numbers. This is starting in 1980. I'm just going to go consecutively year after year. 100, 130, 108, 66, 80, 87, 41, 93, 77. That's insane. Every year following with his stolen base numbers. I mean, really, almost borderline numbers that would have to be made up.
Yeah.
100 walks is great in a year, and he walks over 100 times almost every year too. So, unbelievable player, one of the greatest players that the game's ever going to see, and it's really sad to see him go.
I saw him play when he was with the Red Sox against the Yankees on September 4th, 2002. He was playing left field. We were sitting by left field, and my brother was heckling him because my brother liked heckling people. And my brother he doesn't curse when he heckles. He says funny things when he heckles. But it got to Rickey, and Rickey started putting his middle finger up at my brother. So my brother was giving his middle finger back to Rickey. A security guard noticed it, took my brother, and left me sitting there. And I was like, oh no. My brother's gone for like 5 minutes. He comes back and he says, I have to sit here with my hands down because I'll be kicked out. I'm like, great. So at one point, Rickey starts with my brother again. And I literally bear hugged my brother to keep him from raising his arms up because I did not want to be kicked out of Yankee Stadium, and I did not want to leave the game early. The Yankees won that game. Jason Giambi hit a home run that game, opposite field, wow. Left field. Yes. And that game was shown on an episode of The Sopranos because The Sopranos had a really long hiatus between like 2002 and 2004. And it was in a 2004 episode. And I recognized it right away because I saw Giambi's home run. I'm like, I was there that night. I remember that. That's the night Rickey Henderson almost got my brother kicked out of Yankee Stadium. So
that's a great story.
Yeah. Those were the days. I was still in my 20s. It was a long time ago. But rest in peace, Rickey Henderson. That's a bummer. That's a big, big, big bummer and a big loss for baseball.
For sure. Absolutely.
Coming up next, we're answering a question that a lot of people might wonder about, but were too afraid to ask or didn't think to ask.
There's nothing better every year than attending live events. But what about attending live events and getting out in public during the holiday season? Now, we went through a couple of years during COVID where we couldn't go to live events. And now, coming around to town almost every year, there is a live event that I love going to in my family almost every single year. The Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Do you love heavy metal music? Do you love rock music? But do you also kind of love holiday music too? They incorporate all of it into one concert, and it really is great. I make sure that I get all my tickets for me and my family every single year on Game Time. And with Game Time, getting the best tickets for every live event has never been easier. They got a new feature called Game Time Picks, which does all of the hard work for you. Instead of searching through thousands of tickets, Game Time Picks filters out the fluff and shows you only the absolute best deals on great seats. And if that wasn't enough, they've got an all-in pricing feature. Just toggle it on. It shows you the full price up front with no surprises at the checkout. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code one word LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use code one word LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
So a few weeks back, we got an insider question from Insider Debbie, and I wanted to give it some time to answer it because I felt like it needed its own segment. So here's the question for you all. Like I said, it was a few weeks ago. And by the way, if you do submit Fanmail Friday questions and I feel like we can't answer them right away, I will store them to the side and then we will answer them weeks later. So, don't get insulted if I sometimes miss your questions because I do that with some of them, but this is one of them. It says, hope you were feeling better. Was I sick a few weeks ago? I guess I was. I do have a question relating to baseball in general versus most, if not all, sports. When was it decided that baseball fields did not need to be uniform in size? Always strikes, no pun intended, me funny when we say, for example, that hit would have been a home run in blah, 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 many stadiums. Why was it decided not to have uniform dimensions in the outfield? Because infields are uniform. Obviously impossible to do at this point, but just wondering why this came to be. Seems stats are affected by this. Have asked this over the years, but mostly got shut down. Just as one of those things I am personally curious about. Obviously teams are built around these differences, but which came first, chicken or egg? Choose to ignore this if you like, as I've been laughed at before when asking this. Why are people laughing at Debbie for this question? I think it's an interesting question.
I actually do too. It's one of the few questions that people have asked me at sporting events that I genuinely don't have the answer to. Yeah. I don't know what to tell them. I think I recall going to a game with somebody a few years ago who actually wasn't familiar with baseball, and they said to me, they're not all the same. And I was like, no, they're not. But why not? And I was like, I don't know. I think it's one of the beautiful things about baseball, though, that all the dimensions aren't the same. It's not all the same playing field. Every stadium has its own unique advantages and disadvantages, and you can form your roster and form your team based on the advantages and disadvantages you have. The Yankees do it routinely. So I kind of like that. It's one of my favorite parts about baseball, but I'd agree with you. I think it's weird. I think it's weird that, overall, when you think about it and you actually, as a baseball fan, take a chance to step aside and think, it is kind of weird that they all fields are different dimensions and no one really has an answer of why. There is a rule, though. I will say this because we did dive a little bit into research of this. I know you did. I did just want to add, there is actually a rule in Major League Baseball with the unions that state when a new stadium is built. So, after a certain year, and I believe it's a while ago at this point, down the foul lines, the minimum distance has to be 325 feet, and the minimum distance to center field has to be 400 feet. So this rule was created after Yankee Stadium was built. So it is interesting to see that there actually can't be a stadium built like Yankee Stadium with the distance being that short again in baseball. I find that funny to think about.
So when I looked this up, it made sense to me because some stadiums were built in certain places where like maybe they were between like city blocks and in a square and you couldn't do certain dimensions in certain ways. And I, like you said, I like that they're different. I also like that some of the stadiums were grandfathered into the older rules where, they didn't have to change anything. Like they could make the new stadium the same as the old stadium if they wanted to. Like not all new stadiums match what this old stadiums used to be. You've seen stadiums make changes. You've seen the Mets move the fences in because things were not happening for them. You've seen Baltimore move a fence back and now they're moving it back in because it was causing problems with their team. And I like that does this make sense? I was thinking about this. The infield is uniform. And I think it's because you expect certain things to happen within the infield, where the outfield is more like a free-for-all because the balls can be hit anywhere. And I kind of like that because you expect the bases to be the same distances, obviously, and the distance from the pitching mound to home plate. I like that certain teams have, I mean, I won't miss Oakland Coliseum that much, but it was kind of funny that they had 3 miles of foul territory on each side when other stadiums didn't. The distance between home plate and the back stop also different.
Yep.
Certain stadiums, I like that certain stadiums don't have padding, they have brick, they have stone. There's all different things that you can do, and I like that it's not so uniform. It makes the sport less boring, honestly, because could you imagine if every stadium was built exactly the same way?
Yeah, it would be boring. I mean, I think you do have personality in some of the football stadiums, but the field of play is always the same. I like that baseball has. I mean, but could you imagine though if the football goalposts in certain stadiums are wider or skinnier in some? I mean, it would be crazy to think about. Baseball is the only sport you can really get away with it in that they do. It is funny to see though, if you guys that are listening haven't been on, trips to different stadiums, different towns, which I'd highly advise doing because it is special to see. But there are some stadiums that are traditionally built like, let's just use MetLife as an example, where in that 1970s era of building stadiums, it was, more advisable to build them that are right off highways, so it's easier to commute to, giant parking lots, just made it an easier central kind of thing to do. Then there are other stadiums like Wrigley and Fenway and stuff that are legitimately built in the middle of a neighborhood.
Right. Or like Ebbets Field, Ebbets Field used to be. Yankee Stadium is built in the middle of a neighborhood.
But Yankee Stadium's got a different vibe, though. Yankee Stadium's got a kind of a more open vibe. There aren't houses directly across the street.
True, but you have the subway. You have the subway tracks kind of holding you in, though, right?
No, you do.
The Polo Grounds. I mean, that was a wild.
Outfield. Yeah, wonky, and it was so the Polo Grounds, which is weird enough. If you can still go to the steps of where the original Polo Grounds are, it's still there in Upper Manhattan, and you can actually see where home plate was at the Polo Grounds. It is so highly elevated in Manhattan. It's crazy where they decided to build the stadium. Yeah, it makes you think who was. But if you go to Wrigley, it's wild because when you walk out of the back exit of Wrigley, there is literally a house 30 feet across the street. Like someone lives there, a person lives there with the family and everything. It is crazy to think about how stadiums back then, they just decided there's an open plot of land on this plot right here. Let's just build the stadium right here. Fenway is the same way. And you have stadiums like a Busch Stadium in St. Louis, which is kind of built in the middle of the city, but it's in the middle of a city block. So it's different. There is a little bit more room, and it's a city, so there's office buildings and stuff. But Wrigley is so weird because imagine your general suburban residential neighborhood, and then it's just a baseball stadium in the middle of it. It is crazy, but I think that's what makes baseball special. You really don't see that with football. And it's crazy because some of these stadiums are just as old in football. Soldier Field is ancient, and that one is built kind of it's in the city, but it's off the city a little bit. It's in an open area of land. It is crazy to think about all these things, though, because baseball, I mean, it's the only sport where you have a concept like Wrigley Field, which is pretty standard in size, Yankee Stadium, where the wall is so far in, and the Green Monster. There's a 38-foot giant wall you got to hit it over. It makes no sense, but it's something that's so cool and romantic about baseball.
Or the Crawford boxes where you could just golf a ball into them.
It makes no sense. The whole, but every stadium.
The hill that they used to have that they had to get rid of.
Yep. Or stadiums like the Colorado Rockies, where it's built in a city where the elevation is so high that the ball just flies out of.
Or even old Yankee Stadium, where they had to run through the monuments to get to a ball because it would skip back there.
Yeah, that's a great poll because that's one of the crazier ones ever. It's just all these ones. I mean, the Polo Grounds used to have too the American flag pole in the middle of center field where you had to navigate that. It is wild, some of the stuff when you think about in old school baseball, but it's great that all these old stadiums are still open and still functioning, that we can use them and stuff.
So let's end on this note. Think about that when people say baseball is boring. Like the game itself could be, because there's some games that are boring, but there are football games that are boring. There are basketball games that are boring. Like if a team blows another team out, it's not fun to watch. But with baseball, a guy can hit a ball 400 feet and have it not be a home run in one park and have it be a home run by a lot in another. I think that makes it fun.
Yep, it's totally true.
Yep. So thank you for making Locked On Yankees your first listen today. For your second listen, you can find Locked On MLB. Baseball Guru brings you a daily blend of humor in baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. You can find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Yankees. I'm Stacey Gotsulias.
And I'm Brian McKeon. We'll catch you Monday.